What's up, everybody?
What's up, everybody?
Welcome to the Keep Pluggin podcast, week number
11.
11.
That reminds me of the, did you see the new Louis C.K. stand-up?
I did not see it yet.
When he said there's 9/11 deniers.
God. I've heard it's really funny. I've heard it's a little controversial, though. I hear he kind of goes for it. I've heard that there's some jokes that some people are like kind of upset about.
Oh, well, that comes with the territory, I guess.
Yeah, he's always pushed boundaries, but I love Louis C.K. Anyway, how's it going, everybody? I'm Brian.
I'm Ben.
And as always, we're here to bring you the best in gaming discussion and news. But like we do every week, first we're going to start off by taking a look back. And Ben, we actually got something really cool planned this week. So what do we have?
Today we're looking back to 2010.
2010.
This is April 13th. They released the episodes from Liberty City.
Ooh.
And it said PS3. I guess that was the first release of the episodes. It was on just PS3.
Yes, they were released in the physical set because they were Xbox 360 exclusives first. And then they came... Bow to Gay Tony came out in 2000. If you guys don't know, Episodes from Liberty City is a collection of the two pieces of downloadable story content for GTA 4. They were both really good. It was Lost in the Dam and Bow to Gay Tony. Bow to Gay Tony was the one I preferred more, but they're both...
I agree.
They're both really good, though, from what I've heard. I've never really played Lost in the Dam, but I've heard that one's pretty good, too. 2009, Bow to Gay Tony, the second of those, came out. And then in 2010, the limited time exclusivity ran out, or I don't know. I guess Microsoft and Rockstar came to some kind of agreement. Either way, for a while there, it wasn't even. I know this because I was a PlayStation guy last gen. I know you were an Xbox guy, so this probably wasn't something on your radar. But I didn't know for a bit there if I was ever going to get to play the GTA episodes. There was this kind of nebulous. It's very interesting because people still do this now, with the exclusive contracts and games. Even I remember Titanfall. Titanfall, the first one, had an exclusivity deal where it could have never come out on PlayStation 4. They had to wait to the sequel. So I was kind of concerned if there was something kind of going on. But then in 2010, finally, they released Episodes from Liberty City, which was both of them. And then later on in the year, they were finally made available for download at the PlayStation Store. I guess maybe as part of their deal, they had to release it physical first because they were originally downloadable. I don't know. We're getting kind of more into the business side, but focusing on the games first and foremost. It doesn't just get us into a conversation about these two games, but about GTA 4, which is a game that has kind of gotten into a weird place. I think as it aged, it was acclaimed upon its release. Now I think it's generally considered the weaker of the two HD games. I think most people would kind of tend to hold GTA 5 in higher esteem, or Red Dead Redemption. I personally think, in terms of gameplay, GTA 5 is better, and I love Red Dead Redemption. I think that's my favorite of them, but I actually really still like GTA 4. I think that game's a little... I don't know if you can say underrated, but I do feel like people underappreciate it now. I don't know. How did you feel about the game?
GTA 4, I don't know if I feel like people underappreciate it in general, but I definitely appreciate it. I didn't play 5 as much. I played it at friend's house when it came out, but I didn't play through it. GTA 4, I got... I actually think I got the episodes first.
Oh, wow.
In the retail package.
So yeah, you got the physical edition.
Yeah. So I ended up played through the Nico main campaign after the episodes. Mm-hmm. So I did it a little backwards, but it's still
I'm sorry, I just want to make one amendment. I think I just realized something. The reason why this one is a PS3 edition, I think episodes came out on Xbox first. So opposite. I think the episodes came out on Xbox first. I think why this release says only PlayStation 3 is because later on, when the contract got out, Rockstar released it. So that's probably what this is.
They doled it out digitally first, you're saying? I think is the combined package.
I'm not sure if it was digital or not, but I know everything got released later on PlayStation, so I guess that's what this is.
The combined episodes from
yes.
Liberty City.
Yes.
Package deal.
It was they were individual pieces of downloadable content, and they were combined together into a standalone game, which is what you got.
Yes, and I like them a lot. The Ballad of Gay Tony, like you said, I think is definitely the better of the two. Mm-hmm. But Lost in the Dam was cool. I always liked the little tweak to the driving, how they made the motorcycles more you were better
Yeah,
handling on the motorcycles
you
because
didn't fly off of them.
your character was a motorcycle in a motorcycle game.
They wanted to encourage you to be on the
So
motorcycle.
yeah, they got you like had your special motorcycle, and it just worked better than in the main game. And I think the thing about Gay Tony was that they added a bunch of new guns,
Yeah,
and there might have been like some special cars as well. But I remember the new like cannons and stuff, the crazy grenade launcher,
yeah.
and that stuff was pretty awesome. And
Sticky bombs too. Like a lot of that stuff actually made its
yeah,
way to GTA 5. Like literally those exact same sticky bombs, that exact same grenade launcher, and there was a new helicopter. Remember? Because the
oh
original
yeah,
helicopter was kind of like big and like hard to control. They made like a small one that had like rockets on it and stuff. Um, and they added a tank too. Remember they added like a tank.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Because a lot of that the reason was because GTA 4 base game was like a little bit more stripped back and subdued compared to the older GTA's. It was a little bit more. It wasn't quite as crazy. It was more of like a gritty, grounded
less
story.
cartoony.
It
It
was
was
less.
more realistic,
Yeah.
even though very unrealistic. It was leaning more towards realism
Yes.
in the art style as well as the content.
Exactly. And I actually really like that. Like I loved the story. I don't know. Did you play through the entire story of
I
GTA
beat
4?
all of GTA 4 and the episodes.
It's so
That's one of
good.
my favorite games. Yeah,
Oh, the story is incredible, and then how they expand upon it in them.
yeah. They
Like
do. They tie all the stories together, right?
yeah,
I love that thing. And like, I guess it happens in movies. Like I'm just thinking like Tarantino style movies where you see something from a flipped perspective later
yeah.
on, and then you're like, you get that like,
Yeah,
oh,
because it happens. You see the what everyone says it's like one of the best levels. What is it? Four Leaf Clover, whatever. The one where you do the bank robbery. You
yeah, the
see,
bank heist. Yeah,
yeah, you see that from someone else's perspective in Bow to Gay Tony, and I think
yeah.
also in Lost of the Dam, right?
Yeah, you end up realizing that you've been seeing these characters the whole time, and it's like just those little Easter eggs, that you don't realize, and then you go back and put it together,
Yeah,
and they all intertwine really cleverly.
it's interesting because they obviously I think did expand on that in GTA 5. You have three main characters, so it's kind of that taken to the nth degree where now it's in the main narrative, but
Hmm.
I think there was something really interesting with how they did it in 4. I kind of liked how they focused in on one character, and each character had his own game, his own little time in the
You had to
sun.
go all the way through each character's story. You couldn't like switch on demand like in 5.
Exactly, and there are benefits to that. Although I would argue, with some exceptions, I think the character stories are actually weaker in 5.
Uh huh.
Um,
You think that's because they sacrificed the like? I mean, I'm not sure exactly how it works in 5, but
well, if you want to get into that, I guess for me at least, and this is a little bit of a contentious. This is more of a personal opinion. I don't think this is necessarily how like the broad narrative about the game is. But I love 5, and especially as time has passed, I love it more and more because the gameplay is so good. But from a story perspective, it does seem like a little bit lazy. It doesn't seem quite as well written. Quite the characters don't seem quite as quite as fleshed out, which is a shame because I really think what they did with like the multi-character perspective has a lot of potential. And going forward into Red Dead Redemption 2, I think there's a lot of ways they could take that and do something cool with it. And there are some cool things like the character of Trevor is awesome because he's basically like he's completely psychotic. He's like an absolute killer. He makes no qualms about it. He's basically the character we all play as when we play GTA.
hmm
Like there's something cool about that. But then we have Franklin, who's like the traditional up and coming thug protagonist, and we have Michael, who's like our character in GTA, like 5 years after he made it, and like he's like done with life. And there's things about those dynamics that are really cool. There's some great interactions. There's some great moments, but it does feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities. Whereas I think the episodes from Liberty City and GTA 4 absolutely blow it all out of the park. And some of that might come from, like you said, the fact that it focuses in. You can't just cross cut, but even in moments where it could do that, the game doesn't go quite as far because I think Rockstar was more concerned with the gameplay because people kind of there was I do think there was this kind of backlash to Forest gameplay because it was a little bit more pared back. It wasn't quite as quote unquote fun.
Uh huh. Yeah, some of the gameplay is pretty stiff and the mechanics are like
Yeah,
wonky, but you get used to it.
I agree, and I didn't think that was a problem. Like I would never say the game isn't fun, but
Do you still have to tap to run? Tap incessantly in 5?
you can, but you can also just hold it down and run.
Yeah. Well, I
But
remember you might have been able to do that in 4, but it's much slower. It's like barely worth it.
It's a lot faster in 5. The gameplay in general in 5 is
Uh-huh.
fantastic. I love the gameplay in 5, but
Well,
again,
in general for games, I don't mind a developer choosing to take gameplay over
yeah.
story and sacrifice. That sacrifice is fine for me, honestly.
Normally I'd agree with you. I guess it's just because GTA 4 and then oh man, Red Dead Redemption, those stories were so good while
Yeah,
also having
they can knock it out of the park, definitely.
that's exactly it. I know they can do everything without sacrificing anything. So the fact that they did makes me maybe I'm being a little bit more critical of it because again, as I go back and play GTA 5, I mean that game has so many legs. I mean people still play that game incessantly.
Hmm.
I think another big reason is that GTA Online was the main focus, and that was the other thing we were going to kind of talk about. They obviously opted to not do these kind of story content for they opted to not do this kind of story content rather for GTA 5. They focus on GTA Online. From a business standpoint, that makes sense. It's incredibly popular. They make a lot of money through the microtransactions, but
Isn't there also like specific missions and stuff like events that happen in the online to kind of justify the lack of
yes,
episodes?
there is writing in it and there is a narrative to it, but it is a lot looser. It's like kind of like an MMO story to a certain degree. It isn't quite as in depth. It's nowhere near as in depth as the episodes from Liberty City,
Yeah.
and that's a shame because I would have loved to seen, in addition to that stuff, episodes from Los Santos. I just don't think they had the time to do that. And then it's clear they also had a team that was developing. I guess that was more what Rockstar North does GTA. Obviously, Rockstar San Diego is in charge of Red Dead Redemption, but a lot of these studios work in support of each other. So maybe they just didn't have the resources to do GTA and Red Dead Redemption and all the other stuff they have cooking.
Also, just maybe a situation where they wanted to try something new.
Yeah,
They focus more on the online, and maybe we'll get some episodes from Red Dead 2 or something like that later on.
I would hope so because I mean Undead Nightmare is even
Yeah.
better in my opinion than I love Undead Nightmare.
Well, wasn't that more of an online thing as well?
Well, it had online elements, but it was also a narrative single player
I,
thing.
I gotcha.
I don't know. Maybe Rockstar just doesn't do that anymore, but I hope that that's not done.
Or maybe it was never a plan. It was just GTA 4. They were like, let's just use these assets,
Yeah.
and they didn't.
Well, with GTA 4, what happened was they were basically contracted by Microsoft. Microsoft signed a deal that said you're going to do exclusive content for Xbox, which is where some of that kind of business mumbo jumbo I brought up at the beginning of the segment comes in. They did this, and then it was exclusive content to Xbox. It wasn't really clear if it was exclusive content or not. Then they ended up doing it.
But it did have to
Multi-
be single player.
um,
Under that, it could have still been whatever.
it could have been multiplayer. I guess it's just at the time the industry was a little bit more single player focused. Still multiplayer. We're talking pre Call of Duty still, or like right at the beginning of Call of Duty taking over, and right at the beginning of the HD generation, which is really when
Yeah, GTA 4 is old. Wow.
yeah, dude, it is honestly think of 2010. Even that was 7 years ago that the game came out. Isn't that crazy? Doesn't that feel like it was just
It's a
yesterday?
while. I'm remembering right now playing GTA 4 at a friend's house, like right when it came out,
Oh
and
yeah,
just knowing, like feeling guilty, like I probably shouldn't be, or just at the time when that like mature rated game
yeah.
felt taboo to me still.
Did your parents kind of have a was I know my parents were this way too. Were they kind of weird about GTA? Were they like, oh, that's like the cop killer game. You can't play that.
No, I think they're pretty lax. I think maybe it was more just in my head. And I was like, before I really knew about the game,
Yeah,
so I was like, what is this?
that's so true. Yeah, because it used to be such a big deal. That's right. Like in the early
It was a big deal.
Jack Thompson and all that. That's crazy. Like GTA, I don't remember when GTA 5 came out. I don't really remember much of anyone making noise.
Yeah, I guess it's old hat at this point.
That's crazy that at this point, like, I mean, I think GTA was fine. I don't think there was any reason for it ever to not be normalized. But even
There
if,
was definitely some news things. I feel like I remember something.
I'm sure there'll always be someone making noise. That's true. But I just feel like it dominated the national conversation at one point, and now I feel like it's just like, yeah, it's GTA.
Yeah,
Yeah,
becomes normalized.
yeah. Well, there we go. So okay, Ben. So going from GTA's gone past to Zelda experiences coming at us
This
fast,
segue is getting really old.
dude.
How
That might have been my best one actually. So I'm a little disappointed.
about from Liberty City to
This is
Nah,
yours.
nah.
Don't look at me and expect you to save you.
All right, no savior. We're
Especially
talking
after
about Zelda.
especially after you just talk shit on mine. All right, everybody. So we're gonna try something a little different again this week. So first off, we're just gonna throw up a spoiler warning. We are gonna be going into detail about one very specific aspect of the game. Now, if you guys are playing the game, you probably know what we're gonna be talking about. But if you haven't done some of these segments, you're not gonna want to hear about this if you're early in the game, or if you haven't played the game yet. Obviously, you're not gonna want to. Um, if you guys haven't played the game, you should have been off by now. If you have been playing the game but you haven't done all of them, you don't want to hear, this is your last warning.
All right, so yeah, divine beasts.
The Divine Beast. So first off, Ben, kind of set it up for me. Why do we want to focus on this one aspect?
Well, I think it's a pretty important point for the series being dungeons, and these, they're called divine beasts. I mean, in Zelda, they're not ever really called dungeons. It's more likely to be called a temple in game. It's kind of dungeons is a fan thing or like just a reference point. So I would still call the divine beast dungeons just because they serve that purpose to me.
Yeah.
And they fit the game really well. Some part of me misses these giant labyrinthian like kind of puzzle boxes
Yeah.
of past Zelda games.
Because it is very different.
It is very different, and like something where the shrines, yeah, they satisfy that to some degree, and the shrines are a lot of fun to do, but there's still like that in between piece of just a classic Zelda dungeon, and I think the departure is a really good choice, but I wouldn't be opposed to seeing like a giant temple with block puzzles in the future,
And I think you hit the nail right on the head there, which is that they are one. It's such a shift in the dynamic of how the Zelda games played, which I agree, it's a very good thing. I think for the game, the story it's trying to tell in the world, it makes so much sense. They're very, for the most part, I think they're very well executed, and among other things. But there is a dialogue to be had about like, but could you bring some of that design back in? Like, because I feel the same way. I do miss the old school Zelda dungeon design, and we were talking about this a bit. I actually was having a conversation though with my buddy last Friday who likes the game. He actually loves the game a good amount, but he was having some issues with that part, particularly because he is a pretty big. It's my friend Dan Scartapane. I believe I've actually brought him up a couple times on the podcast. He's a big Zelda guy. He's played through most of the games. He was having some trouble adjusting to Breath of the Wild, and I know that was one of the things that even now he was still saying he did kind of miss the old school dungeon design. And I know we were already kind of having this conversation, so I don't know. Do you think say, because we've already kind of talked about this, they have said, Enuma basically said that, like, well, we have the assets developed. Obviously, we're going to want to shorten the development time. So, look, let's face it. Not let's face it, but same way that with Ocarina, the game, Breath of the Wild has fundamentally changed the gameplay type of a Zelda game. I really can't see them going back to the old traditional style in every sense, but I can see elements maybe creeping back in. Like, I was actually listening to another podcast, like right around the time the game came out, and they were suggesting that for a sequel, maybe you could get a game that's a little bit of a smaller world, still have that exploration element, maybe not quite so much of the empty space, and bring back those like traditional Zelda type dungeons. So how would you feel about something like that, Ben?
I think I'd feel pretty good. I like that idea of finding the happy medium, and I think the purpose of Breath of the Wild was to make a clean break from everything, and like
Absolutely.
they've said from the beginning of development that breaking the conventions of Zelda was a main point of the game. So I think succeeding in that and it working out well gives them freedom to explore going back to some of the old traditions while not leaning on them as a crutch as they started to do.
Yeah, and I mean that is the thing there. There is a lot of room in that middle ground before you get to that point. Because first off, I think I don't want to make this sound negative. We both love the game, and I like a lot of the changes. Again, maybe it's because I played a good amount of Zelda games, as you guys know from listening to the podcast, but I'm maybe not quite as well versed as someone like Ben or my friend Dan Scartapane is. Maybe I'm a little bit less tied to those things, but I love how open and big the world is. I love that it's not a world that it's packed with things to do, but it doesn't feel like it is in like the Ubisoft sense. It's not like the world doesn't feel like it's empty space to the next thing. It feels like a real world. I mean, it could get a little bit smaller and things like that, and I think it could still work. But
I think a good analogy is the art style of Zelda,
Yeah.
because if you think about the Wind Waker and how that was a huge departure and like super cartoony, and it was very divisive at the time.
Yes.
And then they went back to Twilight Princess, which is as realistic as they could possibly do.
Hmm.
And then you get Skyward Sword after that, which is the happy medium
Yes.
of like the realism and super
Well,
cartoony.
even this game is a continuation of that in a lot of ways.
Yeah, so I'm thinking they usually go that route of doing something crazy left field, doing something crazy right field, and then finding a happy medium.
That's true. So if Skyward Sword was right field and this is left, I definitely think we're going to find a nice medium. And
Yeah,
knowing Nintendo and seeing just how they took all the criticism for Skyward Sword into account, I'm sure they're going to be listening to the feedback. We're kind of talking more general now, getting back into the Divine Beast in particular.
yeah,
Just to kind of go over it, I know my friend had criticisms, and I've seen these criticisms echoed online. Just kind of going through them. A lot of people don't like, and this actually goes into the shrines too. They don't like that it's basically all just the same room, and that the Divine Beasts are the same. A lot of people seem to be bothered by the fact that, unlike the Zelda Dungeons of yore, there's no difference in aesthetics or theme.
the
They're all
aesthetics. Yeah,
yeah,
I can get that. How you all have that. They all have that beige. Once you're inside it,
yeah.
it's just that the beige with the neon stripes and stuff that
Yeah.
like I think I forget they said I saw in one of the interviews they said it's based on a specific Japanese era from
Oh,
from history. The whole art style of like the shrines and the those like they look like squiggly
I
like
remember what you're talking
stuff. Yeah.
about. Yeah.
But yeah, I can get the aesthetic thing where you want some variety, but I that just goes back to the point that the variety is in the open world,
Exactly.
and they put really all like everything missing that would be in a dungeon, like mini bosses are in the open world, puzzles they're all in the open world. Like they just kept these dungeons. It's like a 2 hour session of just finding these pedestals
Hmm.
to scan your Sheikah Slate on, and so it's basically just 5 puzzles.
That's true.
And
And I
but they all
guess
have this mechanic of rotating the entire dungeon.
you're right. And everyone is, because I guess the thing for me is, I don't know if the dungeon itself is. I guess it can be 2 hours. I feel like I've done them sooner, but the whole process of, normally you have to do something to get up to the Divine Beast. There's like a boss section of you getting into it. You obviously have a boss fight, and the dungeon itself. Yeah, it's like 2 hours of game time by the
Yeah.
time you're done.
But my point actually about the 2 hours was that that's on the short side for a dungeon.
That
Maybe I take my time or what, but
That's true for like a dungeon in like the old school Zeldas. That still is pretty like.
I would say up to 4 hours I would take in a like Twilight Princess dungeon.
Oh yeah.
That's a deep sink right there.
Well, I mean, that was what did me in when I was trying to do the playthrough before this game came out. I forgot just how much time you spend in every dungeon and how much time you have to sink into the puzzles and all this stuff. And look, I think in a lot of ways it was smart to go a different route. One, because they still do feel in depth, don't get me wrong, but like they do feel a little bit more manageable. They don't feel quite that way. And when you're already in this big open world where the world itself is kind of in a lot of ways, there's puzzles in the open world. There's just traversal is a puzzle in of itself sometimes.
Yeah.
Having these things be a little bit more manageable makes sense in the world that they created, and having a unifying theme around the shrines and the Divine Beast, it makes sense from a narrative perspective and world building, but it also just helps unifying them around a theme. Like there's an area where you do puzzles as opposed to the open world.
Yeah, instead of having a grass dungeon and an ice dungeon, the dungeons themselves are a theme of the game.
Yes.
Not like each dungeon has a theme to itself.
Exactly. They're all unified under one theme now, which I don't think is bad. I even think in the future, even if future Zelda games have more traditionally designed dungeons, I wouldn't mind if aesthetically they're all unified by a theme still.
Yeah, and it feels cohesive in the world, and like you said, it really complements the story and the world building. And yeah, it's just they are what they are, and they work really well for the game. And I guess they don't need to be dungeons. And I also wouldn't be surprised if the next game doesn't even take that like the half measure combination approach, but just does another new thing, and it just becomes this like the story and gameplay informs what a quote unquote dungeon is, instead of saying, "Oh, we have to have the meat of the game be these puzzle
Yeah.
labyrinth dungeons
No,
that themed around fire, whatever."
no. You bring up a very good point there, Ben. I think you're right. It makes a lot more sense, and that cohesion is so much more important because you're right. If it was just these differently themed things on top of this world, that the world in and of itself is so varied and so diverse, and then you have these dungeons with these different themes, it would be almost a little overwhelming. There's something about it, about that unification that's nice. It kind of does work on this level to make you understand. I'm doing puzzles now. I'm doing this now. Like I'm in a certain area of the game. And then obviously, technically speaking, from a processing standpoint, when they're already doing this giant open world, it just makes sense. It really does because to have these things be a little bit less taxing on the system, although they all exist as their own separate spot. They're not like part of the open world. You do load into a separate map.
Yeah, although it does do a good job of making you feel like it's just part of the world.
Yeah.
I think when you're in the Divine Beast or just like on top of it, looking around,
Yes.
obviously you're loaded somewhere else, but it's really easy for me at least to forget that. The illusion is really done really well in having the open air feeling transfer to when you're in a beast.
I agree because even in those dungeons themselves, like there's ways you can use your skills. There still is experimentation in them. Like
and there's like enough of the loading zone around you, like
Yes.
in the air, so you can kind of like fly around. You could jump off,
Yeah.
and like fly to a lower level and manipulate everything from the outside, which really isn't done. Like some of the past Zelda dungeons, you might go outside and it's like a balcony,
Yeah.
and then you come back in.
Yes.
You never get to like jump off the dungeon and just climb up to another window.
No. Or use one of your abilities to float on a gust of wind and shoot up onto like the top level or anything. Like you're never
Yeah, you really have all your tools to manipulate.
Exactly. And then too, there's something really cool about the fact that every beast itself has something you can manipulate. Like like it's a trunk, or you can, if it's the flying one, you can change how it flies. We're obviously not going into names and specifics here. I think in part that's because, at least off the top of my head, I can't remember every name, but I don't know. I like all those things. I like all those aspects, and they don't bother me.
And you still get your epic boss fight in a heart container.
I would say so far, the last one I did, I most recently did. I think it's Van Meadow. I don't think that's the right one.
Just say what area.
The camel one. That's
the desert. Okay.
Yeah. The one that's in the Gerudo Desert. I did that one. I really liked it. Actually, my friend Dan Scartapane hated it. He just did it this weekend too. I think it was the best. Well, I actually still think that no, Van Meadow is the first one. It's the elephant. That's my favorite one in terms of the puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
But the best boss fight was in the one I just did. That was incredible. I
would agree. That's the best boss fight.
Yes.
I think my favorite overall was the flying one.
I really like that one too.
That's just personal. Personally, I always like the sky dungeons or whatever. Like in a game, that aspect appeals to me. Just flying, and the way you entered the flying one was the coolest one of those. To me.
That was so great. I love that. They've all had pretty great, like the entering segment where you kind of team up with like the new person who's kind of the more or less like the new analogy for the champion in their generation.
Yeah.
And you have to get onto it. They're all so thrilling.
Yeah, it is kind of interesting story wise. I just thought that you're interacting with the descendants of your past friends.
Yeah.
But you don't have a descendant. You just were asleep for 100 years.
You are your own descendant in a sense.
Yeah.
It's so interesting, because I was wondering with this game at the very beginning how it was going to handle that passage of time. I was like, is it just like everyone's is immortal and doesn't age? But it's like, no, everyone aged, you just didn't.
Yeah, you missed a lot.
I wonder what Zelda... Oh god, Zelda's probably old. I hadn't even thought about that.
That's a good point.
Oh, well, maybe we should keep playing so we can get to that point,
Definitely. I'm almost at the point I want to fight Ganon.
How much more? Because you're pretty far. Like you're at like 120 hours. I'm only at like 80 hours. Like when do you think you're gonna call it with this game?
I think it's just I'm gonna get every shrine before I.
How close are you?
10 shrines.
Holy shit! I'm like at like 60 right now only, and I've played. Damn, I gotta get my shrine game up, dude. You're killing me
But
right now.
now these last 10 are completely elusive. Like I'm looking everywhere. I have no quests left. I don't know what to do.
I have so many side quests still. I still easily. I'm 80 hours into this game, and I easily
Yeah.
have another
I
80
have some
hours.
side quests, just not shrine quests.
Oh, okay.
That's what I meant.
Yeah, I don't really do that many of the. I like the shrine quest way more than the side
Oh
quest.
yeah, because they actually mean something. The side quests are like actually just side quests.
They are, but also
Sometimes you get a dope armor,
yes,
but usually it's just money.
there are rewards. They're also very basic. I feel like there's actually a little bit of narrative and like exploration behind the shrine quest. Like they are satisfying.
Yeah, only a few of the side quests are very satisfying and developed. A
Yes.
lot of them can be just like characters like, show me an ice rod,
Yeah.
and that's the whole thing.
Although even those they have a certain charm to them. Like they're a
Yeah,
little like there is this monkey kind of like, yeah, we know this is stupid, but
it's not even that stupid. It's also cool if you just have an ice rod, and it's
yes,
like, oh, there you go.
that's true, and you get money for it. Like it does kind of incentivize you to. They, from a gameplay perspective, they work pretty well because it incentivizes you to go out into the world and collect certain things or look for a certain item you haven't,
Yeah,
or if you have the item on you immediately, you get an instant reward and you get a side quest done.
everything intertwines really well,
Yes,
and like making you explore, giving you stuff for exploring that helps you to find new side quests, and then make you explore.
yeah.
It's all great design game. Love it.
Well, the gameplay flow is absolutely spectacular. Um, Tell you what though, Ben,
Get the blights.
get the blights. Um, yeah, I agree. Get the blights.
Also, take pictures of the blights. That's my tip.
Oh, I haven't done that, so I will do that.
Well,
I
if you kill them, you gotta.
well, I only have one left, so I'll take a picture of him.
Okay.
So at least I'll get one. Damn. To be fair, I didn't even have it when I took on the first one. I didn't have the ability to take camera pictures yet. Camera pictures.
Fair enough.
Okay, so
Well, all right. Moving on. I got a certain special thing this week,
you got a very special thing this week. You want
and
to tell the audience?
it's a little something called NES Classic Nintendo Entertainment System Mini NES Classic
Edition?
Throwback 30 games
Is that the official
included. No, there's probably a few more words in there. I'm missing. But yeah, me and Dan Roach, who was on the podcast, went into GameStop on a whim, and the guys behind the counter, I don't know if they thought they were sly or something, but they were like, "Oh, we got those NESs?" Or no, one of them was like, "We got any Switches?" And he was like, "Nah, but we got NESs." And me and Dan just look at each other like, "Wait a minute.
title? What do you mean?
Hold
What do you
on."
mean you got any?
So we're like, "You guys got NESs?" And they said, "Yeah, we got two."
damn.
So pretty much match made in heaven for both of us there.
God damn it! I'm so fucking jealous, dude.
Right place at the right time.
Ugh.
And yeah, couldn't pass it up. Bought them on the spot.
Under $60, you get 30 games. It's so worth it.
So worth it. I've been playing Zelda. Me and Dan just came back here and played some original Zelda. He's never really played that one, so we were having a good time trying to get through it as fast as we could.
How was that for him? Like after playing so much Breath?
He seemed to be loving it. I think it was interesting after playing Breath, because I started to see how much inspiration that actually took from the original game.
It's crazy when you realize that like literally everything in the game, like every monster, so much of the design, like even like you brought this up a while back, the color coding, it is all there in the original game. Like it truly is stunning how much it is a throwback.
Yeah, and just the openness and
Yeah.
a lot of and very simple things that like I wouldn't notice until I played the original again. Just like the way the menus are with the items, how it's very simple, like a black box for each item. On the pause menu. It's just I don't know how on purpose that is. It's just a simple menu, but just that kind of thing is interesting to me, I guess. But yeah, we were playing Zelda 1. We were using save states a lot. I know that's it can be frowned upon if you're
Has
trying
it
to.
been something like I guess because that's like even like a ROM thing, but like has that been something that with the NES Classic like purists have like decried the fact that you can save anywhere?
Uh, no, I don't. I think just in general, you might get the purist who's like, "Oh, I'm playing without save states," but that's just a figment character.
Yeah.
It might not be a real person.
No,
But
there definitely are those people because there's always someone who's like that.
yeah,
But
I guess I'm that person sometimes. Sometimes I'll play a game
yeah,
where I have save states capability,
yeah.
and I'm just like, it's cool to have the option because I can decide to not use them.
See, but that's the thing that doesn't make you that kind of person though. Like you acknowledge maybe you have a preferred way, but you acknowledge that it's cool to have the option at least. Like you're not
Yeah,
like decrying people for trying it.
and after having played the original Zelda myself without save states, it's it's cool to be able to do it now, and it's a different experience. Like
Yeah.
it's not right or wrong, but it is a different experience.
And I'm sure in level it must be relieving because like the original Zelda is a hard game enough already.
Yeah, I'm even playing it. I'm like, we'll save like literally on the transition into a room in a dungeon, and we'll just be trying to perfect this one room. And it's
Interesting.
yeah, it's kind of a different gameplay loop, and it's like, how can we just perfect this room? We have infinite tries, and I sometimes I think back to my original playthrough. I'm like, how did I get through this dungeon without save states?
That'd be really cool for like if you're trying to practice for like a speed run or something. I
Yeah, to
know,
just practice certain parts
yeah,
forever.
I know Zelda One was a pretty big speedrunning game, and now Breath of the Wild is becoming like a giant one. So,
Definitely.
oh, man.
And but yeah, in general, the system is really cute and nostalgic, And the way it works, like with the save states, you have to press reset on the console because the controller is literally an NES controller.
All right.
There's no home button or anything on it, so you have to have the console next to you. And I think they kind of want to recreate
Yeah.
that feeling, when you're on the floor with your NES back in the day.
Hmm. I know for some people it's been a little just how short it is. Like, I know
Yeah.
obviously in your case you have this nice table that sits in front of your TV, but do you think that like would you want to get like a longer cable for like the controllers and stuff? Like, does that bother you?
Um, I guess it somewhat bothers me, but it's just the fact that they also pack in a pretty short HDMI cable, and it's like if you're gonna have that short of a controller cord, you got to give some slack somewhere. But I think I would sooner buy a an adapter that lets you plug in original NES controllers.
All right.
I think that'd be cool to have because I have tons of NES controllers.
I didn't even know they made that. That's so cool though.
Yeah, it's a third party thing, but
I mean, that's
the
awesome
uh,
stuff.
the way it is, the controller that comes with it has the the nunchuck into the Wii mode
Yeah.
connection.
So you can
It
use a Wii
has that.
Classic.
So yeah, you can use the Wii Classic controller, which is better in the sense that it has a home button on it,
Yeah.
and the home button activates the emulation menu, so you
That's so
don't need
cool.
the console next to you.
That is really cool to have
So
that.
if you have a Wii Classic controller and an NES Classic, put them together.
All right. So has that been your preferred way to play?
Well, no, it's good in its own right, but I also been having a lot of fun with the brand new NES controller, which just feels amazing to have.
Right. I have two questions I'm gonna
Okay,
give you.
all right.
One short, one's I think gonna lead into a longer discussion. So one, other than Zelda, what have been the games you've been really loving either to replay or play for the first time on it? And then two, kind of getting into it. There's been a lot of talk now about this was a big success, even though there's been a big problem with Nintendo having enough stock for them, particularly because when people started opening them up back in November, they realized just how freaking cheap this thing was to make. So it is clear that to a certain degree, and look, I get it, it's smart. They had the Switch coming out fairly soon afterwards. They didn't want this to take up too much of the spotlight. This is always kind of meant to be a limited edition thing, but obviously we have the SNES is going to be turning 30 in a couple of years. I believe last year was its 25th anniversary, right? Or is this year its 25th anniversary in America? I know we
I
were
think they're up to 30.
30 on the NES on the SNES.
Oh no, on Super it is. It's probably around 25. Yeah.
Yeah, so we're coming up on an anniversary at some point for the SNES. People have been wondering if we're going to get that. Like, how far is this going to go along? Because obviously, Nintendo has the Virtual Console, and they're going to make a big move in the GameCube with the Switch. So, how do you think this factors in long term to their business strategy?
Well, to answer your first question, I'd say Balloon Fight is my favorite other game right now.
Awesome.
And as for the other part, I'd say a Super Nintendo Classic would be really awesome. with the same setup, the special new controllers, and yeah, just picturing a mini Super Nintendo right now feels really amazing to me. I'd want that. I think something about the N64 would be harder to do,
Yeah,
just because it's four. At that point, you have four controllers,
yeah.
and it's really a multiplayer focused console.
Hmm.
So like to be able to get
Ports on it.
four not even just the ports, but having to buy four N64 controllers with new connections.
Yeah.
I know it feels a little bogged down at that point once you get to
Also,
N64.
because as much as I love that controller too, it hasn't maybe aged that well.
True, yeah.
Like I love that controller, but it's not the most comfortable thing to hold in your hands.
But a brand new one, they could tweak it,
It's true.
make it work. But
Maybe with like a better analog stick and stuff, that'd be
yeah,
pretty dope.
I'd enjoy that. But the NES and Super Nintendo are definitely more prime for this kind of thing.
I completely agree. So I guess to kind of get to focus in on it again too, um, the second part of my question, which I think is really pertinent to these things, is obviously there's a lot of issues getting this thing. There's a lot of issues with it,
Hmm.
with its availability. So do you think that that's going to continue to be an issue? Because I understand from a business perspective, obviously they have the virtual console. I mean, they make a lot more money with that. They want to keep pushing that. So do you think that with the SNES, if they even make it, that's going to be an issue too? Like it's going to be a limited edition thing. It's going to still be hard to find. And you think that because of those technical issues you brought up, plus the fact that those games are still available, do you think after SNES they're going to just stop doing these?
The reason it's hard to get, I think, just boils down that it seems like they like to have certain items be special,
Yes.
and they don't seem to care much about selling as much as they can possibly sell. They
Well,
kind of,
again, they can sell each game individually on the virtual
well,
console.
yeah, the NES Classic itself, they could easily
Oh
produce
yeah,
so many more. But I think something in their philosophy, they want it to be special for the people who get it, and it has to
yeah.
be this kind of special little gem you have to find. And I don't know. I think that that's what they want the experience to be.
I think so too because
Is that crazy as a business?
I think it's that plus the business side of it, which is also in the long run, it makes more sense to not sell this as a wholesale unit when you could sell each thing piecemeal.
Yeah, and it also I guess depends on what the Switch Virtual Console will be and how that manifests.
That's the thing
It could
too.
complement it really well,
It could.
or not. You know.
Well, because here's the thing too. We already know that they're going to be giving away an NES or an SNES game every month with the. Well, I mean, you only get it for the month, but with the Switch, so we know that they are going to be working on SNES and NES games with online play. So they definitely factor in. But also, the big rumor has been that it's GameCube. So N64, GameCube, some of their older systems might be more of the focus with the Virtual Console now, which that's an interesting dilemma you get in there. Where now it's like, okay, so that's the case. So with these older games, maybe they are more willing to put them into these boxes and just make a ton of them. Because
Yeah,
again, they
maybe it's been long enough for those first two systems
yeah
that they can just become something else at this point, and they'll focus on bringing back more of their like GameCube,
yeah.
maybe even Wii
I
at
mean,
this point with
I
Wii ports with the Joy-Con.
again, yeah, we were talking about that because like I would love like if we got even though it's so different, I would love a Skyward Sword port. Maybe that takes advantage of the Joy Cons and is a little bit more refined. You know,
Hmm.
I think that could because again, I think that game has kind of caught some flack over the years. I think that game is due for maybe something that renews it in people's
I
eyes a
don't
little
know if
bit.
it's due. I think it's due as a game, but I don't know if it's due time wise yet. I think it needs longer.
Fair in terms of times, yes. I guess I'm speaking more as a game and for
Yeah,
its quality.
a tweaked Skyward Sword Definitive Edition would be really good.
I agree. Um, at the same time, Nintendo, and this is something that I do actually really respect about them as a company. They are so focused on keeping the quality and keeping the not not just the quality, but also the value of their individual games. They know they have the best back catalog in the entire industry, which is I think another part of the reason of why it
They're
was so
protective.
they're protective why these things are limited because they don't want it to be you can just go to a sharper image
Yeah,
and pick up 30 of their best games.
because also Sega does that. They have the Genesis with loaded games on them, and they're not made as well.
Yeah.
Also, but just the fact that they're like the Atari flashback as well.
Yeah,
Those could be way cooler than they are if they played it right. And I think maybe Nintendo was looking at those possibly and how they kind of look like junky plastic that you could
exactly.
just find at Dwayne Reed or whatever.
Exactly. And I think they're afraid by making this thing a limited edition thing, it doesn't become that.
Yeah.
If I mean this thing, it's not badly made, but obviously it is a little bit of a cheap product. I think they're afraid that if this is a massively produced thing, they'll be in that same category as it's not even. I think it's a company that owns Atari's name at this point because Atari's been dead. Sega obviously fell off the wagon years ago and is now kind of just milking its
Yeah.
legacy for everything it's left. I don't think they want
Well,
to
the
become that.
Sega one is cool because you can put real Genesis cartridges into it.
That's
It's
pretty
not
cool.
it's not mini, but it's like
Oh,
it is mini, but it fits the cartridges still. You know,
so it's like a
just
real working Genesis.
yeah. It's basically a Genesis, and it has games on it already.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
It is cool, but something about it is just viewed differently as like a cheaper thing. You know,
Yeah, because it's like that plug and play.
it's
Like
like yeah, it has
yeah.
a stigma about it.
Yeah, and Nintendo subverted that so expertly by making it this hype thing, and then yeah, there's a point to be made there. Well, tell you what, Ben, you gave me some food for thought right now, something to
I'm
chew on.
glad.
So tell you what, Ben, I think it's about that time that we stop this and we chew on this food that you've given me mentally.
And yeah, maybe next time
Right,
we will. Maybe next time I'll have hacked my NES Mini.
right. You
And
were
I could
trying to
talk
hack
about
it.
that. And
Take us
also,
take us through that real fast. You're trying to hack it.
oh, I mean, it's not much yet. So far, I've just failed. But no, I downloaded the software and everything. It seems really easy, but my computer wouldn't read the NES through the USB port, so I have to figure something out.
Hmm.
But my goal is to play every NES game on it.
All right, so there's that.
But
Ben,
regardless,
I'm gonna shake.
shaken.
We're gonna shake our hands. Audience, if this is the ending you end up hearing, I wish you a good night. I wish you good luck. I hope you're safe. I hope you're happy. And I'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Ben, you be good.
It'll be good.
Everybody keep plugging.
Keep plugging.